Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to the LGBTQ and Religion panel hosted by your local Triangle Coalition. That's us. I'm president of Triangle Coalition, the Tess House, and I'll be moderating the panel tonight. One thing I do want to say is, unfortunately, we did not get the representation from the number of religions that we were hoping to have. But we are very thankful for the people who are here and willing to share their experiences with us. So I'm hoping that everybody comes into this with a place of respect and know that the people up here are going to talk from their point of view and their perspective, and that they do not speak for everybody. Okay, all right. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and let you introduce yourselves. You can give us your name, how you're affiliated with the university, and your involvement, etc., whatever else information you feel is pertinent. And so start on this end.
Okay, I'm Mallory Williams. I'm a senior. I'm studying communication and sociology with a minor in psychology. I'm involved in Tri Sigma, and I did dance marathon for a couple of years, a couple of just miscellaneous things here and there, and I also am a member of Missouri United Methodist Church downtown, so that about covers it.
Okay. My name is Kelsey Kupfer. I'm also a senior. I'm studying sociology also and journalism. I'm on this panel representing Jewish students. I identify as Jewish, or also as kind of like an agnostic Jew. I served as the president of the Jewish student organization for a while, and I also work at the Multicultural Center as a coordinator of a program called Diversity Peer Educators, which helps or encourages students to talk about things like religion and LGBTQ rights and things like that.
I'm Sharon Braun, also a senior, fisheries and wildlife major, biological sciences minor. I am the secretary of INUSASHA, which is the Atheist Skeptics club on campus, and also I usually go to the Student Union, and that's about it.
My name is Adam Leong. I'm staff of Asian Christian Fellowship here at Mizzou InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, and I graduated many years ago. They still let me hang around, so it's nice.
Thank you all. So the way this panel is going to work is I have a sort of list of prepared questions, and I'm going to ask them of the panel and invite all of them to respond, though if you don't want to respond to a certain question, you don't have to. And that should take about half of our time, and then we're going to ask for questions from the audience. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. So the first question for the panel is, how does your religion how does religious experience impact your identity within the queer community or as an ally to the queer community? So whoever wants to start.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of different points of division that I think the queer community and Christianity, for better or for worse, identify with as opposed to points of connection. How Christianity shaped my identity has been one of God calls us to love people, and love takes a lot of different forms. So I think that's another one of the things that I've been battling with, is the idea of how do you love the queer community in a way that actually shows that shows love in all of its different forms. So there are some obvious points of tension between the queer community and the Christian community, but how do we elevate the discussion beyond that? How do we actually have conversations as Christians with people in the queer community that does not focus itself around the issue of whether or not attraction same gender attraction or however you define it is a choice or if it's biological. Like, can we actually move beyond that point and actually talk about things that we have in common? That's a case of as being an Asian American at a university that is, for the most part, not Asian, like not a high population, about 2.5% Asian American. I think there are a lot of points of similarity in terms of being a minority and feeling like your voice might not be heard in a lot of different issues, and how do we work together to advocate for the rights of minorities and those sorts of things. I think that conversation can be a lot more productive than what is sin, or whether or not what you define as sin and what I define as sin, or who, and those sorts of things. I think there are lots of other points of agreement that we could be moving towards.
Atheism in general is just simply a lack of belief in God. So you will see many people in the atheist community having very different beliefs, but from my personal experience and from many that I have met, we come from a very secular humanist point of view where it is, kind of love everyone, kind of the same thing that you were saying, and just kind of be yourself and be accepting of that. So.
So Judaism is pretty cool. Within the group of Judaism, of Jewish people, there are three pretty distinct sects. So there's Reform Judaism, Conservative Judaism, and Orthodox Judaism. And those three things are kind of on I don't want to put them on a continuum, but they kind of are. That Reform Judaism, let's start from the other side. Orthodox Judaism is very traditional. The laws are seen as very strict. So Jewish laws that were written thousands of years ago, you hold as sacred. Those are the laws. You cannot deviate from those laws. Conservative Judaism is kind of in the middle, and Reform Judaism on the other side is very liberal. And with Reform Judaism, they see the Torah, which is Judaism's holy book, as divinely inspired, but written by people at the time, with the language of the people at the time, and within the parameters of the society and the social context of the time. And so Reform Jews see Jewish laws as things that need to be critically evaluated constantly and can be growing. They're living, growing, changing, things like that. So I identify as a Reform Jew. I was brought up in a Reform Jewish community, and just like with their kind of liberal doctrine, Reform Judaism is all about acoustic guitars and loving each other and stuff like that. So it's cool because Reform Judaism was the first collective religious group in North America to come together and say, we openly support, I think at the time they said gay and lesbian people, but the LGBTQ community, and Reform Jews specifically have kind of been on the forefront of advocating for LGBTQ rights, for ordaining LGBTQ rabbis, for performing same-gender marriages, stuff like that. So that's cool. And I think part of that has to do with a kind of shared history or shared understanding that both Jewish people and the LGBTQ community kind of have in common. So I think both groups have historically been seen as an othered group, as a continuously persecuted group. During the Holocaust, LGBTQ people were rounded up and killed or experimented on or exterminated just like the Jewish people were. And so I think that shared history of always having to be closeted, Jewish people have often had to be closeted in their faith. And so that shared history, I think, is something that contributes to at least with Reform Judaism, that acceptance of the LGBTQ community. However, I think, especially in America, because we do live in a Christian-dominated society, a lot of those, and because Judeo-Christian beliefs are very intertwined, and those two religions are intertwined and seen as similar, that there's still a lot of sometimes judgment or hesitancy to accept the LGBTQ community on the part of Jewish people just because of our American society. like, I know even though, again, I was brought up in a Reformed temple, when I came out to my mom, we were talking about it, and she was like, well, I still don't think it's right. And I was like, why? And she was like, because of God. And I was like, but that's not what your religion even actually teaches. Like, haven't you even been listening? And so I think that's something that I've experienced while the movement or like the religion as a whole, with Reform Judaism is very accepting. It still kind of varies from community to community. And then within conservative Judaism, that is actually really based on community. Conservative Jews don't have one thing that they prescribe to in terms of LGBTQ acceptance, and then Orthodox Jews don't think that it's okay. So yeah, that's my community.
Good answer. So for me, I was raised in a very, very Christian home. Specifically, I was raised United Church of Christ, who's very open and welcoming to all people as a church as a whole, like on a national church level. My home church specifically still has not voted they still haven't voted something about being officially open, but we did have a lesbian pastor for a while, and I don't think anyone had a problem with that. I think she was out, at least to my parents she was, because my parents met with her when I came out to talk to her. So first and foremost, I was a Christian before I realized that I was queer. So for me, my problem that I've struggled with has been, so I was raised as a Christian, and then when I started coming out when I was 16, I was dating a girl who was raised Lutheran, and she was very scared. And she was always like, it was a sin, and, I didn't agree with that because that's not how I had been raised in my faith or in my family. I mean, my family has always been allies and, has had queer friends, and they struggled a little bit, with me coming out because it's a little different when it's your own daughter. But for the most part, I was raised to be accepting and loving to all people. And so when I was coming out and dating my first girlfriend, that was something she struggled with as a Lutheran. And, we kind of got through that together because then I started to question if it was a sin. But eventually we got through it. And then we broke up, and I came to college, and I kind of went back in the closet for a while. And but I was very out as a Christian, and I was doing mission trips, and I joined a church here, and so I was very out as a Christian, and I'm in a sorority, and so that was kind of why I struggled to come out as queer. So then the strange thing that has happened now in my 4 years of college is now I am completely out as queer. I've completely come out. I've come out on Facebook. Everyone here knows. As I meet people, I tell them right away. But now I found myself struggling to then tell people that I'm a Christian. It's like I've come out of one closet and gone back in another, because for some reason, even though I've always attended churches that have been open and welcoming and don't think it's a sin, because society and because there are churches that preach so much about it being a sin, I think that I am constantly afraid that other people will look at me and say, like, oh, there's no way that you can be a Christian and be queer, or maybe you are, but it's a sin. And so I personally have kind of put myself back in the closet of being a Christian because I've finally come to a point where I'm so accepting and out as queer that I'm now struggling with coming out as being Christian and queer. So it's a strange dilemma process, but...
The next question I have is, what, if any, discrimination have you experienced or seen in association with your religion and or queer or ally identity? And anybody can answer in any way.
I'll go first. So being bisexual and an atheist, I had to come out to my parents twice, which was lovely. And I'm from a very, very small Catholic community, so it was very hard to come out to as both, and I actually waited in between a year. First came out as atheist to my parents, and then as bisexual a year later, and only half my family still knows about the bisexual thing because it's so hard, and I've still had many people say, just don't tell so-and-so, don't tell your grandmother, kill her, don't tell which is hard because I've never been one to lie. I've always been one to be very open, and so it's very hard to kind of lie by that kind of omission, which is awful. But I think the worst discrimination that I've had so far is actually from my sister. And we've always had a tortured relationship anyway, but after coming out in November, around Thanksgiving, to her, it was then when I went back home for Christmas that she gave me a 3-hour lecture telling me how I was killing my mother and driving her to alcoholism, and that I shouldn't have come out at all and I should never come home again. So that, and having to deal with that on a daily basis and trying to still keep a connection with her, it's probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question was, what, if any, discrimination have you experienced or seen in association with your religion and or queer allied?
Well, I have a very recent example to give, as recent as an hour ago. I posted something this afternoon on Facebook saying, I'm speaking on this panel tonight about my experiences of being a Christian and queer, and there will also be other people speaking about their experiences of being LGBTQ and their, I think I said, respected faiths or something. And my dad's college roommate is a pastor in Texas and sent me a very lovely, very long Facebook message quoting scripture and telling me, basically that it's a sin, I won't inherit the kingdom of God, so on and so forth, signed in his love, like capital H, like God's love, and his name. So that was nice. So that's one very recent example of, because what he was saying was, I've known other Christians who have struggled, he kept saying struggled with homosexuality, like he kept repeating that, and I've helped them through that, and blah, 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 and something along the lines of, I've never seen a Christian proclaim to accept it, or something where, like, basically I'm wrong. Like, basically I can't be a Christian and queer, or I can, but it's something that I need to be working on and, improving on, and not, working towards being healed of being here, so I can inherit the kingdom of God. So that was really nice to read an hour before coming here. So, yeah, there's my answer.
I've never actually been out in my religious community, except for so on Mizzou's campus we have 2 Jewish student centers, and one is called Hillel, which is a Reformed Jewish center, and one is called Chabad, which is an Orthodox Jewish student center. And within Hillel, I think I'm out, but in Columbia, for the Columbia community, there's another synagogue called Beth Shalom, which is a conservative synagogue, and they, like I said, with conservative groups, it's kind of based on the community or on that particular rabbi, and I don't think I would feel safe coming out in that space. But I think the biggest thing is, again, it's really, I think, safe to be queer and Jewish in the Reformed Jewish communities, but not necessarily within Orthodox or conservative spaces. However, as I was researching things for this today, I found out that a group of Orthodox rabbis, of really respected Orthodox rabbis, got together in 2010 and released this statement that was basically, I thought it was really cool. They were like, listen, this is what the Torah says, and it says that, they interpret the Torah to say that same-gender relationships are wrong. However, they had all of these points that were like, but basically the Torah also says that bigotry is wrong and hatred is wrong, and so you can't do any of these things because the Torah says that they're wrong. So they listed all these points about things that you have to keep in mind when you're talking about LGBTQ stuff in the context of Orthodox Judaism, and they're things like you have the right to reject anti-gay treatment if you think it's harmful or useless or you don't want to do it. That should never be forced on you. Your decision to be out is completely up to the individual. So they said there's no out allowed to out people in your community, and you're also not allowed to shame people who are out. If they're out, like you need to embrace them, and if they're not, that's okay too. You're to fully embrace like the family and like the children of same gender couples, and welcome them into the community just like you would anyone else. And that no one should be encouraged to hide their sexual orientation, to change it, or to marry someone of the same gender to like try to make their sexual orientation go away. And the whole thing was just about how we think it's wrong, but we also think that anyone who identifies as a Jew belongs within a Jewish community. And that was like the end of the statement, and I thought that was kind of cool.
I think that my experiences of discrimination would be purely along ethnic lines, being an Asian American, and usually I think that one of the areas where I've experienced it the most has been something along the model minority line. It's not an active racism that you would see that would get a lot most headlines, hate crimes, and those sorts of things. That stuff still happens against Asian Americans, but more of the passive sort of hey, I thought you were all good at math, or something along those lines, and just like stereotypes and those sorts of things. And I think a lot of my experiences have been looking at it from a Christian perspective. My experiences have always been like, what's the right way to correct in love? Then, like, how do I actually? So, if something happens against me, I've some of my friends, and they are very passionate people, and their response is, well, let me tell you why you're wrong after I've removed my fist from your face, kind of a thing. And my experiences have been that usually when you start attacking, people start defending, and that's really how things escalate very quickly, and no progress is ever made. But some of the experiences where I've had of discrimination, I found to be most effective has been just like with a posture of, hey, let me explain why that wouldn't necessarily be the right thing to say to someone who is Asian American, or hey, let me explain like why we're not all exactly like that. And with that sort of posture, I think that's been something that's led to a lot more learning and a lot more than acceptance, and people actually change their behavior versus when it's like, hey, don't ever do that again, or let me yell at you for a little while. Then it becomes less about what discrimination was, what discrimination happened, or what act of racism happened, and more about the overreaction of the individual who's receiving it. And so the conversation later is, man, I can't believe so-and-so flipped out like that. I mean, it was just a joke, or whatever the case may be. So I think that's been some of my experiences. Have been trying to, okay, when I encounter discrimination, when I encounter that, and not just for me, but when I see it happen to my to my friends in the LGBTQ community, to my friends of other ethnicities and those sorts of things, like how do we advocate for one another in a way that actually is less about shaming the aggressor and more about like educating and speaking truth in a way that's actually going to be helpful for them down the road, so that they don't get beaten up at a different time when they make the same joke to somebody who's bigger.
That's a really great segue into my next question, which is, how can people within your religious community be an ally to the queer community, or vice versa?
Yeah, I think the Christian community has done, for the most part, a really poor job of being allies with the queer community, and I think it's because there's a focus on. I think because there's a focus on the action, and there's a focus on the issue of like it's a matter of definitions. I think in a lot of ways, if you believe that, regardless of what you believe about homosexuality, the Christian message is that we are all broken people in lots of different ways, and so I am a broken person. And just because I'm heterosexual does not mean that I am less broken than anybody else who isn't, who's bisexual or homosexual or whatever, whatever the case may be. And so I think that one of the areas where, as the Christian community, we need to do better is actually elevate the conversation beyond beyond the queer issue. Because if all that we're trying to do as Christians is try and fix this thing, then it's never gonna. It is gonna be that attack defense sort of feeling. When I come across when I meet people who are who are queer, and they ask me, well, I'm gay. Can I be a Christian or something along those lines? I say, look, I don't know what God is doing in your heart. God may convict you of something. He may not. I have some friends who have decided that they are that God has given them these desires, and that's who God has made them to be. I have some other friends who've said that actually there's some brokenness that needs to be that God needs to heal in those areas. I don't know you as well as God does. Why don't we? If you want to follow Jesus, He's going to reveal to you what He's going to reveal to you, and whatever happens, we will be there to support you. We will be there to love you. We will be there to offer you whatever encouragement. And I think that posture is a much more helpful posture than the other way, which is, well, fix this first, and then we'll talk about you coming to Jesus. Because that's not actually the message of Christianity. The message of Christianity is that we act in response to God's love, not we act in order to earn God's love. So I think that'd be one thing. That's just as a Christian community, if we were to elevate the conversation beyond sticking, the tension there, and actually to, okay, how do we, what does Jesus say who He is, and what do you think about that?
In the atheist community, most of what we try and do to be an ally is just a lot of education, always address the issue that may come up. Recently, we actually went to the safe space training for the LGBT center, or with the LGBT center, and actually, I know a bunch of our officers learned a lot, just, what's more politically correct, different ways to address certain issues, and so that's something we're always trying to do, and we always let everyone know at our meetings that it's a safe space and that they can talk about whatever, and if there's questions or concerns or something that needs to be addressed, we do that.
So I think one thing that should be addressed too within Judeo-Christian religions is the idea of the link between sexism and heterosexism, because within Judaism, in again Orthodox specifically and also conservative sects of Judaism, like women are not allowed to be clergy. Women and men pray in separate rooms. Women are not allowed to be bat mitzvahed, things like that. And so I think that one thing that all religions can do to address heterosexism is to look at the kind of structures of the sexist structures within their religions and work on addressing those. Because I think that if we can get to a place where men and women are seen as equal, then we can move beyond that. It's a more easy transition into looking at LGBTQ rights. And so another thing that's cool, this is just like Kelsey's show about why Judaism is cool. But another reason why Judaism is cool is because one of the best things that you can do within Judaism, which is why I really love Judaism, is to study and to question and to learn and to argue and debate and discuss. And if something doesn't sit right with you, if you read something or your rabbi tells you something and you're like, well, that's weird, you're supposed to question, even if you're 12 and you're you don't agree with your rabbi, you're allowed to ask and you're allowed to say why, and you're supposed to sit down and read and talk about it until you get to a place where it makes sense to you. And I think that's something that everyone can do with their own religious communities and with their own religious texts, is to always be looking at them and questioning them and saying, these are the words of my faith. How can I make them fit what I believe? Or how can I kind of reconcile if there's any tensions, if you're saying, between me and between me and my faith. And so I think that, at least within Judaism, while it's not direct allyship, this idea of always questioning and religious doctrine being something that is living and changing is a form of allyship. More direct allyship, Hillel for the last few years has gone to this event that the Columbia Pride Day week event thing has, which is this interfaith pride celebration, which is super cool, where all of these different religious organizations get together and just like talk about like spirituality and say prayers and sing hymns and do all these cool things. And there's been a representative from Hillel that's gone to that event. He also hosted the event for the last few years, and I know that for me as a student, that's made me feel really, I mean, that's a very obvious and active sign of standing in solidarity with your students, and letting students know, instead of just saying like, oh, this is a safe place, we accept everybody, actually going out and in front of your whole community saying, yes, here we are, we accept all students. That's a brave thing to do with your students, and I really appreciated it.
Yeah. I think for me, like Kelsey said, I definitely lately have been doing more questioning and more learning and more research and a lot of talking to my pastor about like, you know, what are some of the historical contexts and stuff, and like what does this actually mean probably back when the Bible was written, and how does that not necessarily apply today? And also, like what he was saying, I think I've gotten to a place where if I meet someone who says that they think homosexuality is a sin, while I don't agree with that, the question I ask them is, okay, so it is, let's say you think it's a sin. If you do. I don't. I really don't. But if they think it's a sin, I ask them how that is any different than any other sin, especially sexual sin, because I know plenty of my straight friends who have lots and lots of sex outside of marriage. And so the same Christians that think that homosexuality is wrong also may think that sex outside of marriage is wrong, but they're not talking about all of the straight people who are having lots of sex outside of marriage, and then all of the other sins. I mean, none of us are without sin. Like he was saying, we're all broken. We're all broken. So why is this one particular sin? So they think, I don't think, but so they think, why is this the one that is so picked apart and focused on, spotlighted, and all this stuff? Like, why is this so different? Because in the end, you know, as hard as it is for me to wrap my mind around this, I do think in the end that all sin is equal, because we all sin, and you know, I don't necessarily think that one sin is better than the other. You can lie, you can murder. It's hard for me to wrap my head around, but in the end, I think we all are broken, we all sin. And so that's where I've tried to be lately is, you know, if I do meet someone who says it is wrong, while I will start out by first saying, well, I disagree with you about it being a sin, but then I ask them, you know, how is this sin any different? How is it worse than your sin? Because, you know, you can't tell me that you don't have sin too. So.
I think we're just going to go to questions from the audience now. So,
I wasn't here for the intro, so are we allowed to ask personal questions of you?
Yeah, sorry. Oh, I should have mentioned that. So yeah, you can ask questions of the entire panel or of one specific thing.
Okay.
Or
Sorry, I don't know your name.
Me?
Yes.
Sharon.
Sharon, hi. Question is for you. I'm curious if because you said you first came out as atheist and then came out as bisexual, if the reaction to you coming out as bisexual, if they said it was because of the atheism. Because I feel like I've heard other people allude to the fact of like, first I came out as this, and then it was like, oh, because you lost your religion is why you're this way, sort of thing.
They didn't necessarily come out and say that, but there's been a lot of talk the past few years, like, oh, you've changed so different than the person you knew in high school, which isn't true. It's just I didn't come out of the closet. I wasn't comfortable enough to, so they didn't only knew that person. So a lot of it is, oh, you're just rebelling, this is just another type of rebellion, you know, you're just going off the tracks, you're just trying to be shocking, something like that. But I can definitely see how people would allude to the fact that, oh, you atheists have no morals, and therefore it's okay to be whatever. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've got a question for everybody. I say that because you're not having a scholar who doesn't believe in heaven. Do you think it's easier, everybody, if believe in good, if you don't first believe in anything else, particularly God?
Could you rephrase that one?
Yeah.
Is it easier to believe in good if you don't believe in evil?
Yeah.
Sure. You're the
I'd like to give it to our panelists first.
And I think for me that's difficult to answer because I was always raised as a Christian, and I was raised with the message that God is good, and that you should do good to others and be good to others, and the Golden Rule and the Ten Commandments. And so I think it's hard for me to kind of separate them or put one before the other, because the way I've been raised is that God is good, and everything with God is good. And if you know God, you know good, you know love, you can love others, etc., etc. So
it's the same.
For me, it's hard for me to separate good and God, because I think God is good. So it's hard for me to kind of say that I believe in good first before God, because I think they go together. I think
Sorry, I don't think it's necessarily easier without a God. It might be less complicated because you don't have maybe rules you were grown up with that you're somehow defined, maybe. But then again, many religions have this now. You know, it's how do I put that? The kind of the God is love thing, and kind of the more accepting, and it's not this old religion with the very staunch rules. But as an atheist, I grew up Catholic, and it was never harder to, be loving toward everyone. It was just something that I think everyone's taught, and it's not necessarily connected to, or it should just be something that is kind of in you, if that doesn't sound risky, but that's kind of what secular humanism teaches, is, that you can be good without God. Morals are not tied to religion. It's not saying that people who are religious are immoral, or that it somehow stops you from being so, but that's what I got.
Any other questions? Oh, yeah.
I just kind of say that, like she said, I don't feel like anybody might need religion as long as I'm not saying that people who are religious don't feel like they're necessary.
Yeah, I want to go ahead and say I agree with that. As a Christian, I have atheist friends, and I think that they are wonderful, great people. It's something we disagree on, but, I don't think that they are bad people or don't have morals. I think we just have different beliefs, and that's okay. I mean, it's no different than I have Republicans, so. No. That was just the first thing. That was just my first example of someone with different opinions than me.
Any other questions from the audience? Yeah.
I'm actually curious about, like, when it comes to bringing groups together, that when, like, they first come to mind, you think, that doesn't make sense. How that works, because I'm involved in unions, and I was talking to friends, I was like, we should do something because there isn't, like, I've been told that I hate gay people, and, like, but no, I don't. I already explained it. But then my friends at Newman were like, but if the whole event was, like, based around, like, bringing two groups together if they disagree, like, wouldn't the basis of the event be, like, different opinions about sex when that's such a small part of who we are and who we think they are? Like, wouldn't that kind of defeat the purpose? You know what I'm saying? So, like, you're bringing two groups together because you want to show that, like, you can get along even if you have a difference. If it's still based on that difference, then you're not really elevating the conversation. And, like, viewing people as whole people with sexuality is just a part of who they are. You know what I'm saying? Instead of, like, a whole, like, how do you do that? How do you bring other groups without making it
I think you just try to keep in mind what you said, that the reason you're coming together is because you probably have more similarities than you do differences, and you just try to not to focus on the differences and get together and try to find out what the similarities are.
Yeah, I think it's exactly what you said is the focus on the whole person, and doing, like, interfaith groups are, like, collaborative events where you are all, like, working toward one common goal. I wouldn't ever set up, like, an educational event that would turn into kind of a debate, because sometimes people try to do that on, like it's going to be educational, we're going to see each other's viewpoints, but that can get, like, really unsafe really quickly. And so I think that the best way to do that is to put people in a situation where they're working toward an unrelated common goal, and then have, like, this free time, like, make them garden or something, and then they start talking to each other, and then you can be like, oh, like, you have a girlfriend? That's neat. And, like, you can't move because you're gardening, and you have to talk to them. And I think that kind of communication is what kind of advances change. And, like, the kind of events that would facilitate that.
Yeah, there are different purposes, or different events have different purposes, right? So there are times there are debates, and there are times when you're bringing two groups of people together with the express intent of hashing things out and knowing that people are going to disagree, right? We had presidential debates come to mind. I was like, that's what we do, right? A couple months ago, Bill Nye the Science Guy had a debate with about a creation and evolution thing, right? Those are coming like that event is specifically, look, we have two differing opinions about this. Let's come together, and you'll get your chance and I'll get my chance, and then at the end we'll shake hands and pretend that we like each other. I think that so your intent and your purpose to whatever it is that you're trying to do is I think is crucial. If your intent and purpose is to build relationship, then you do something that's going to build relationship. If your intent and purpose is to learn about the other, or another group of people, then you design it in such a way that is going to learn about a different group of people. If it is to make something delicious, then you design it in a way that's going to make something delicious. I think the intent has a lot to do with it. A lot of organizations, I think there's a difference between diversity by there's a difference between intentional and unintentional diversity. And I think that unintentional diversity is, oh, look at us, we have 3 black people and 2 Asian people and 4 and 4 people from the gay community in a group. Look at how diverse we are. And I think that those, when you're going for that kind of, like, let's just get everybody into a room, that's where a lot of problems happen. But when the intent is, well, how do we actually serve all the groups that are going to be present, then I think, and that's the intention, not how do we get them to serve us, or how do we get them to make us feel better about ourselves so that we say we can, X number of this minority group with us, then I think that it actually leads to better events. If I may make a shameless plug, at 7 o'clock in the Shack, we have Jason Chu, who is an Asian American hip hop artist. He's going to be giving a free concert. Free dinner starts at 7. His concert goes at 7:30, and after that is going to be an hour workshop on how do we, as minority groups, advocate for one another, or how do minority groups advocate for one another. And so we're going to have. My hope is that we have a plethora of people from all sorts of different backgrounds there. That'll be at about 8:30 or so. And it's with the express intent of how do we learn from each other and how do we actually how do we actually help one another. Which is, and it's not from an Asian American, it's from an Asian American perspective, but it's not just like how to help Asian Americans, sort of thing.
We are all about shameless plugs and trying to.
Great.
We're the best at them. Did you want to respond, Sharon, or go to the next question?
Well, the only thing I really have to say is, Sasha, Ilka's club, we kind of do this thing where we get different groups together all the time, and in fact, we, regularly try and do faith panels, debates between possibly an atheist and Christian, atheist and Muslim. And I know even recently there's been talk about getting an interfaith kickball game started, which will be interesting. But yeah, that's it. And while I'm talking, I'm going to do another shameless plug. And that is that Sasha's actually having our own little coming out meeting tomorrow in Strickland at 6 p.m. 117, I believe. So you should come to that, and I know there's going to be an awesome TED Talk we're going to show first, and everyone's going to be able to get together and talk and discuss. So.
Right. Other questions?
I was just wondering for people who grew up in a faith-based community, if there was some sort of reconciliation in yourself, I don't know, I don't want to get too personal, your queer identity and your religious identity, but if there is this kind of moment where you're, I have this religion and I still believe in it, but I'm also queer, and it doesn't really. I was wondering what that kind of looked like, because I feel like I know people, and I'm also struggling kind of that with myself. I just wondered what your experience was with it and how you came to terms with it.
I would say I'm still coming to terms with it. I think a powerful turning point for me was I went to Haiti in January and for a mission trip, and it was the first or second night there, and I was leading the kind of the reflection of the evening, and I can't remember what I really said to open, and then I read something out of a Christian book I was reading, and then I read something out of the Bible, and then all of a sudden I decided that I was just going to announce that I had been really struggling with coming out as being a Christian at school, even though I had been attending this church for 2 years, the church that I went on the mission trip with. And I think just saying it out loud finally to someone, to a group of people, really was one turning point in just acknowledging and telling other people who are Christian, and because I think that's the awesome but also really scary thing about being in any religion is it's not your entire life. It's a journey. It's a walk. So you're going to go through things that are going to test your faith and make you question. And you're going to struggle, and that's okay. And so I think that. So no, I would not say that I've had a moment or that I'm there yet, because I think it's I'm definitely in a better place than I was before I went to Haiti. I think that was a really powerful turning point. And I would love to think that I'll get to a point sometime soon, and not when I die, but sometime soon where I'm okay, I fully accept that I am Christian and queer. But I think as long as I'm receiving messages from places like Westboro who claim to be Christian, or even not even people as extreme as Westboro, but even just other Christian churches or faiths who won't let you get married in them, or won't even let you attend, or make you feel unwelcome. I think that's going to be something that's going to prevent me from prevent me from completely accepting that I can do both. So I think I don't know if that helps. Sorry, I feel like I'm like rambling now, but I don't think that I'm there. I think that I'm getting there, but the answer I don't know is like if I'll get there, if it's going to be one of those things that like I continue to learn and grow and walk in my faith with. So.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I haven't had that struggle personally, but I've talked to a lot of students who've had that struggle, and I've kind of seen like two different like main things that students have done, and it's kind of like, it seems like students either like find a church or a faith community that tells them the messages they want to hear, that like they're like accepted in positive messages, but for a lot of folks that's not giving them what they actually want. Like they want to be in their faith-based community because there's so much to the community aspect and the family aspect, and like there's so much more than just kind of the belief to it, like the rituals of it and everything. And so the people who don't want to leave their faith community, even if their faith community doesn't accept their sexuality, have kind of like, I've heard them say like, I just came to terms with it on my own, with my own like savior and my own faith or my own God, however I see that person, and like really like they talk about like how they prayed a lot about it and they kind of like figured it out and did their own like reflection and study and questioning and like just accepted like, well, these people are going to say these things that are different than what I believe, but I'd rather be with these people even if they misrepresent that part, because I figured it out in my heart with the person that's giving me my power or faith or whatever that person like they've done that. Or I've seen a lot of success with people who just like go to say the thing that they want to hear, but I think it's important to know that's not always an easy thing for themselves. Because there's also people who are just like, religion, if it says that you leave, then leave. And it's like, well, it's not that simple for a lot of us. So like figuring it out. But I have seen a lot of times people like, no, I worked it out with my person, with my love, with my belief system. Not that it's easy, but.
Okay, well, we're nearing the end of our time, and so if there are any just like really short final things, final thoughts that any of our panelists had, I invite you to give those now. Or not.
I would. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go.
I just say, I'm really glad that this is tried to put on this event. And I think that elevating the conversation between I don't want to say that between Christian and the gay community, because they're not mutually exclusive, but it feels like they can be at times, and this is the sort of thing that will break down those walls. You are going to find that not everybody in the Christian community agrees with anybody else about anything. just in general. Theologically speaking, there's a wide spectrum, and you're going to find people who are on one side where of the whether or not it's a sin, whether it is, and you're going to find a lot of people about that. And my encouragement, my hope, is that the same love that is expected to be shown towards, and acceptance that is expected to be shown towards any minority group would also be the kind that is expressed. So as Christians, look, we're going to screw up all the time in how we approach the issue, because we haven't thought about it really well. So on behalf of Christians, I'm asking for grace. I'm asking for preemptive forgiveness, because we're gonna mess up, and most of us are trying really hard to figure out how to do it well. So also, if you're an atheist, don't see God is not dead, because that's just a movie. It's so bad.
So the only thing I have to say is just continue to try and understand everyone and all faiths, all different beliefs or lifestyles or whatever, and just be able to get people around you who support you and who can understand you and who you can talk to.
I think it's important, I'm thinking about your question, that to remember that all of your identities are your own and you can shape them in whatever way you want to. And just like being a woman doesn't make you less of an athlete, that being queer doesn't make you less of a Christian or anything like that, but you can really decide how you want to portray those identities and what you want from them. And kind of what you were talking about with, like, is good inherently connected to God or not? That purpose, I think everyone can agree that the purpose of religion is to make people better people or to find that love or to find that goodness. And so I would encourage you to find things within your faith that you do love or that you do want to hold on to and that you do really connect with, and then make those things part of your identity.
Yeah. I just want to reiterate that, just because I'm a Christian, I'm obviously not perfect, and I think, every Christian I know is not perfect, every person I know is not perfect, and I think that, especially people who don't identify with a religion, I think this is the mistake of a lot or some Christians, is they tend to kind of put on this mask and be like, oh, I'm perfect, like, I can do no wrong, I believe in God, I'm a good person, but, we all struggle, and so I think it's important to remember, and I know I personally have had this discussion with my pastor before, that especially pastors are put on a pedestal, and, you tend to think of them like, they don't have sin, they don't struggle, but that's not true. Just because they're a pastor doesn't mean that they're not human. So I think it's important to remember, no matter what your religion, that we're all people, we're all in this together, we're all struggling. And then also, shameless plug, I go to Missouri United Methodist Church. It's downtown across from Shakespeare's, and you can go love it. Pretty big, can't miss it. People always say the red doors whenever I tell them, they're like, oh, the red doors. I'm like, if that's how you remember it. And they are very open and welcoming. And, I don't want to exclude any other churches in Columbia because I haven't checked out any other churches. I think there might be some pamphlets back there that can kind of help you research, but I just know I personally have found a safe space there to be both Christian and queer, so if that's something you're looking for, I would highly recommend it. I love it. So.
Actually, didn't know which you're referring to.
Until I saw the red door. I don't know what.
Let's give our panelists a hand. Thank you all for coming. All right. Thank you all.
Thanks to you.
Thanks everybody for coming. I'd like to again reiterate that we are sorry and apologetic that we didn't have more religious and more viewpoints represented, and that we did want to have more, and hopefully if we do this again in the future, we will this time. Thank you all for coming.
And then Pride Parade on Wednesday too.
Pride Parade Wednesday, you're going to be there. Okay.
Yeah.